Hi, this is second podcast of Okami, and today we're going to be talking about internal and external world. What do they mean to you? How do you deal with them? How do you recognize them? What do they feel like to you? Does the world live in its outside environment? Does it live in its inside perception? We'll just see what these things and labels, terms mean to some other people. Today we have Kaya and Sean joining me, Ed, for this conversation. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So, hi, this is our second conversation. This is Kaya, this is Sean, I'm Ed, behind this mask. Today we are going to talk about internal and external world in different ways. Like we will see where the conversation takes us. As I mentioned before, any questions, misunderstandings, we just ask, open forum. Again, we're here to just explore and see what else is out there. So just to kind of kick it off, in a reasonably short or simplified way, how would you explain what is the internal and external world to you? You can think about it, whoever wants to take it.
Do you have a chart?
In a simple way. I mean, if you've got something, please.
Don't understand that yet.
Yeah, not in a simple way.
I might actually. So, I think for me, if I was to kind of describe or illustrate what these words are evoking for me, I would say internal world is a place that is isolated from other people, such as the space for imagination, such as the space for spirit and mind, and these concepts which we know or we use to explain things, or to develop ideas, but we can't physically touch it. And then the external world, and I think perhaps I'm just working with opposites here, but I'm going to give it that kind of grabbable, touchable, surface type, organic, physical space, physical things.
Yeah. It's a tough one for me because, as many of my friends or very close people know, there's a lot of things that happen for me, like so internal and external. I guess in that say I probably agree that the external as we see it as this current level or current frequency of human beings is very much the physical day to day, what we see. But almost like a cycle, I feel like the internal like starts and ends as the external starts and ends kind of thing, almost like that kind of subconscious into conscious kind of flow. And I guess the internal, to put in like a simplest form for me, would be the boundless, like the constant expansiveness, the expansion within. Like I think there's so much more we can get from the internal than we can get just from the external. But contradictory to that, when you expand within and go internal, you then begin to expand and see and take from, or not take from, but experience other people and the other, more of the physical in a more expansive, deeper way. So I think like kind of
Feed each other.
Yeah, they definitely have the ability to feed each other, I think.
I mean, so far I'm kind of visualizing a passing through. It's certainly sounding like a relationship to oneself, you know, and how intention becomes action, perhaps, or how action can influence in your internal world, which it just itself perpetuates. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually it's very interesting. I was speaking to my friend the other day, and we was talking about conscious, purposeful action and like the positive intent of action, and we're saying that breeds more positive action. So it's like being consciously doing something, but doing something consciously. And then by doing each of those things, that perpetuates the next one for you to want to do more, or want to think more, want to expand more. So they both feed each other. And I guess that's the same thing with that internal, external kind of relationship.
Yeah. I hear that. The concept that drives your action.
Yeah.
That's funny. It reminds me also of a kind of idea I follow when I'm sort of having a bad day. If I have a bad day and I acknowledge that it's a bad day, I'm like, oh shit, tomorrow I'm gonna have another bad day. In about 20 minutes I'm gonna have a bad moment. This is how I'm colouring right now, you know? And I like to think that your experiences kind of take momentums and works on momentum. So you do, as you say, you positive sort of action or experience will lead to another one. Likewise on the other bit. I wonder, in the context of polarity, it's possible to find positive in something that isn't positive for you, but is still positive in its.
And that's an interesting point though as well. Again, another thing I was speaking to, that whole thing of I know it's for me especially throughout this crazy time we've been going through in this worldwide with the whole pandemic. I think it's about, no, it's not about, but I think there's been a lot of times where we've gone things that aren't good for us, and in the moment, because we are humans and a lot of the time we're ruled by emotions, and there's a certain sense of self all the time when we're dealing with our emotions. We can get quite selfish in that sense sometimes, and we believe like, oh, things aren't going good for us. But as you probably know yourself, because we're all a little bit older now, like those things we think are bad or not great for us right now, 9 times out of 10, whether it's a couple of weeks, couple of days, hours, months, years, whatever, we go, oh wait a minute, that time back then when something wasn't that great for us, again, it was exactly what we needed in that specific moment, which is a wonderfully beautiful thing, which I think it's just one of those concepts and almost laws of life that confuse me. I always have this word, why must we go through these things to learn those things? Why must it happen this way? Why must there be pain and suffering in certain aspects, whether that be mentally, physically, emotionally, or in terms of relationships? Why do these things happen? What is the point of them? And then equally to that, it's quite interesting that in those moments of why I then go internally to figure out this external happening, and then later on the enlightenment comes and going, oh, after you've gone internally, you've thought and mulled over that this is why it happened, and then the physical external action will be like, will present itself as some form of event and be like, boom, amazing. Oh well, if I hadn't have been through this, and then I hadn't have gone internal and kind of just like understood that and kind of figured that out, this never would have happened. Do you know what I mean? How like, it's just so mad.
Okay, interesting. Both of you have mentioned so many things that already you just kind of have thrown within this topic that can happen, and both of you have mentioned just about visualization of both, and the way how you perceive them physically or not physically. You mentioned words like imagination, mind, spirit. You spoke more of like physical perception and then non-physical projection within this physical world, and how direction of attention clearly manifests itself in certain ways, and then also how from that manifestation or even perception of the manifestation, how can you learn things. And then those kind of things go into three potential topics, which if we have time, I'd like to address all of them. But one was physical and versus imaginary, in the sense of a modern world, matter and virtual. So I'd like to speak about that at one point. Another one, which is the perception and projection, so that is somatics and phenomenology. We'll touch upon that. And the last one, if I recall, yeah, so imaginary matter. And yeah, you spoke of lessons learned. Literally today had a conversation about if, and this is kind of just as a thought put in there, and we'll see what you guys think about it, but if intelligence is combination of awareness, ability to retain, and imagination, so innovative ways of dealing with things, that implies that anytime you put focus onto something or notice something, you grow, you learn. That's what intelligence is, it's learning. So from that premise, if you strip it all the way back to like the first principle, like literally basics, that would potentially imply that anytime you notice an emotion or a thought, instead of going like, what am I feeling, or just going with it, or what am I thinking, what you go as to why. It's a lesson, as Kai mentioned. It's a lesson because it's an opportunity for you to reevaluate something that you all either have taken in or have remembered. And clearly through experience in life, people that invest in assessment and then an action rather than just reaction bear more results than just going for it and going with why instead of okay, what is this teaching me? So yeah, we have three potential branches. Which one do you think would pique your interest? So matter versus virtual, somatics, phenomenology, they're kind of similar, and the last one is thoughts and feelings, lessons learned.
I'm always drawn to the last one.
Thoughts and feelings, lessons learned.
Yeah.
So cool. With that in mind, it ties in with its point of, because I was about to ask, where do you most reside, physical or external? And this is kind of describing both. So to you individually, that is the question. Thoughts and feelings, lessons learned. How do you deal with thoughts and feelings when you are approaching them as lessons? And anything around that.
So, thoughts and feelings for me is a funny one. I like to think of myself as quite self-aware, so I've constantly got myself in check, and I'm always checking, like internally, thoughts, feelings, physical, how I'm feeling towards people, why I'm feeling this way, what's my intention behind thoughts and feelings towards certain people, how they've developed, and the others around me, like those kind of things. So it depends. I think it kind of comes back to that internal external thing, and if we think of that kind of higher sense of self and the human self, sometimes, obviously, because we are human, I can be drawn into very human situations that, obviously, as we all, I can probably agree to, is that some things affect me in a physical way, which makes me emotional. I feel a certain way, and there's enormous reactivity from learned habitual circumstances with certain people. But other than those very specific circumstances, I try to detach from certain thoughts and feelings, because what I believe is that a lot of them aren't of me. They're learned behaviours through people I've been around, through parents, through media, through everything. Stuff that we're kind of fed and taught, and ways we haven't been taught to deal with certain things and topics and feelings and emotions, which then express and manifest in sometimes ugly ways or ugly thoughts and feelings, which I know don't come from me or from my true essence. They're not based within me. They're just things that almost I don't have control over them. So when they're there, instead of me attaching to them thoughts and feelings and making decisions based on them, I try to let them be, almost flow, and listen to them and be like, okay, that's great. I know that's not me, and I know like they don't come solely from me. They may come back from some past trauma or
This is
pain.
the external influence
Yeah.
into your internal world, then becomes your external world through your expression, and it's like a self-perpetuating never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, do correct me if I'm wrong, like your way of learning is that constant assessing. Like you might not necessarily pull out every single thought and feeling, but a certain level of conscious awareness is always on. If anything, it just sounds, yeah, you can't, you don't lead a mindless, everyday life.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's like a constant, like I say, it's a constant on checking myself. So, like I say, there's only very rare occasions that I'll act out of character or act based on emotions. So I know that when I'm making decisions, whether they're for the good or the bad of myself or anybody else, I know there's always that turning point where it's like, oh, should I, shouldn't I, will I, won't I? And if I make that conscious decision too, I know that is of my choice, of free will, not based on emotions or thoughts, because I check myself at that point and like, guys, that's not okay, or that is okay, or it's good or it's bad, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Like that kind of thought happens there. I can't really turn and go, well, I ate the chicken and I didn't know I was eating chicken, even though I'm trying not to eat meat. Or so those kind of things. It's a very specific conscious decision.
and we are back. So yes, as Lily just mentioned, there was something that you said about human experience, and then how you explain sometimes still things happen. Certain things you can't predict. Not everything that you can control, right? And that, I believe, that is that breaking point, and then feel free to entertain this idea of human versus observer. So your human physical existence within this life, and even sensations in the form of sensation, touch, hearing, sight, and I like. Those are still your sensations and senses, whereas your perception of yourself, even perception of your thoughts and feelings, and anything that you might or might not learn from it, even the ability to choose whether it's a lesson or let me just go with this, that comes from that kind of observing, self-aware place. So I feel like those moments when there's like, let's call it a slip potentially, and it doesn't mean anything bad, it's just slip from whatever your intention is that, shifting in between observer / experiencer / observer, and how do you stay within both, or that kind of this is kind of question / also statement, because I don't want to stray too apart. I still want to hear Sean's.
So how do you maintain both?
Yeah, like
The
this
balance
is
of-
still kind of the same question, but now you have a bit more of more words to put in it. Same question as to Kai's, how to maintain, how do you express, but
I mean, personally, I think that observer and experiencer are the flip side of the same coin, and possibly the same thing. I mean, I think if I'm experiencing a moment, it's the same as observing it. If I was to give like an analogy of experiencing a predator hunts its prey or observing it, it's the same for me. but if I were to interact, then I guess maybe that's where the experience might be more indicating the interaction within a moment, and how I might help the predator or help the prey, based on whatever narrative I choose for this moment. Anyway, bringing it back to emotions, something that really resonated with me in what you were saying is within the word, like separating oneself from their emotions or even thoughts, and kind of acknowledging that there are external influences that pertain to how we feel or how we might think. I am a super emotional being, and it's been my life's work to be like, should I be emotional? Should I not be emotional? Should I be emotional? Should I change? And I've never been able to not be who I am. To the point that sometimes it baffles me for when I meet another person who doesn't listen to their emotions.
Who's in absolute opposition, like so rational and neglecting towards their emotional expression, not even trying to understand it. So like absolute suppression, something like that. I imagine. Met hardcore rational people.
And I ponder upon the diversity of human beings, because that's just another version of existence. There's how many more? It might be completely individual.
See, it's interesting when I'm talking about separating from emotion and feeling. I don't mean it in the sense of detaching from my emotions, because just like you, I'm highly emotional. I mean in the sense of letting my emotions run the decisions that I make or the interactions that I have. Because everybody's having an impact and having an effect on us as a whole, and that can be a very emotional experience. And as I think as an unconscious human being, you can allow other people's feelings, emotions, or energies to impact yours in a negative light, and have the lack of understanding to be able to see the situation for what it is, and then yourself then react in an emotional way. But in terms of being emotional, I'm highly emotional, and I think the when I'm strongest is when I'm able to be emotional, but allow emotions and feelings of others to flow through me almost like a conductive river, and I can excrete that emotion in any way, shape or form. So I can take in your pain and your sorrow or your anger or your love or your hate, and I can let it fill my body, and I can experience that and expel it in a certain way. I've just been speaking with my friend and her children, like the way they interact with me. Even now, like it almost brings me to tears, just because the children are so beautiful and tapped in. They're coming on in years now, but they like certain things. They sent me messages because kids are more innate, and just went out of nowhere sent me a message and was like, "Oh, how you doing? Are you okay?" Both of them at separate times as well, not knowing that either one of them had sent the message, and said, "Oh, and I was like, yeah, I'm amazing, I'm fine. How are you?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm great. I just wanted to message you because I felt like you was a little bit sad earlier on." And this is two different children at completely different times sending almost identical messages to me, and honestly, like, my entire heart just crumbled. Like I was like in the car, and I was like, I was like, it's just so beautiful. Like the tiniest thing can make me highly emotional. So yeah, I think definitely I'm fully against detaching away from emotions and going primarily into logic. But I am also quite against letting my emotions riddle and control me to the point where I start making decisions based on those emotions or other people's actions and those kind of things.
I mean, so like on to the connecting it to sort of, you know, the lessons learned from our emotions. I like to think.
Bringing it back.
Yeah, I like to think about myself. Like, I think I'm quite empathetic in my life.
That also sounds like you were kind of describing that channeling.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, it came from a very real experience when I was young. I'm originally from Jamaica, and when I was there, I was sort of everybody's son because my mom was already here in England. I was only there from a very young age, but somehow I experienced a lot of pain in this time, but it wasn't recorded as my pain. And in experiencing the pain, my child brain just did a thing where it suppressed it. And I think that was the trigger for me to try to understand other people on more than just the surface. I feel. And so if I get emotional, I'm often a real conductor when I'm with a person or with people for some time. It can actually be very quick that I absorb them till I start to assimilate the way they act, speak, and before I know it, I'm a different version of myself. And that is always something I'm having to digest. So when something's up, I know, because I'm not okay. Or when something's good, and my thing as well is that I enhance it. I really enhance it. So I have to try and understand, okay, I am feeling a whole lot of love. Why am I feeling this energy? You know, what in my interactions? Because I think the emotion is external. I think it belongs to the external sense of our conversation. I don't think it is something that came from within, even though it is processed inside. I think it's that chemical signaling of something that is worth exploring. And so I might feel okay, we can use the context of, like, you know, types, like romance. You know, you might have a type, a kind of person, like, what even is that? A kind of person who triggers instant attraction. So that came from a one-time experience with somebody that you kind of observe these qualities as something that that are compatible with you. And so whenever you see these traits, you're like, it's my type, because the
association of, like, well, last time this is how it worked.
And it releases the emotion, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm infatuated. And a lot of people, can completely be consumed by that, crave the emotional stimulation, you know, and as much as it might be pain or it might be love or whatever the emotion, whether it's good for them, bad for them, they might just crave having that. I know a lot of people who kind of leave relationships because they're not constantly being fueled. I'm low-key one of those people. When things aren't feeling, I am like throwing rocks and banging hands.
Because you speak this energetical language rather than just words or even, because to some people it's not even, you know, people say actions speak louder to words. To some people, even actions not enough. Like, they need to feel the right intention from you, the energy, the constant presence of that, and it's kind of when you mentioned that, you know, that emotion isn't necessarily like internal, it's kind of external. And if any of you have heard, you know, emotion is an energy in motion, and that's what this world fluctuates in. And this is kind of to continue, but also throw in another what we had here. This is that matter versus non-tangible virtual, and this is what I mentioned before, semantics and phenomenology. So the reason why these two specifically go, I don't know whether either one of you are familiar with these, but in quick, simple terms, semantics is the practice of understanding the experience through your own sensual perception, whether it be internal or external, and that interpretation of your learning from experiencing, in a very simple term. And phenomenology is a section within philosophy. In its basic form, it states that an object or a living being within an event or happening, and your perception of it is the reality. So when something happens to something and you see it, hear it, and alike, whether it is through our basic senses or the ones that we are still to explore more, that's what builds it. And so one kind of explains that our reality is perception of the things that happen around us, and the other one is that our perception is what builds the things around us. Because within phenomenology, questions like, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to hear it, did it make sound? Arise. Yeah. So within that plane of semantics and phenomenology, quick brief and just seeing how thoughts and emotions exist within this plane of creating our reality, but also they are what is explaining our reality to us, because we're learning from our thoughts and emotions, because that's what prescribes what we take in, but it literally also projects what we create around us. So with that kind of a thing in there, thoughts, responses, no rush.
Yeah.
Yes, it could be, so whatever it sparks, it sparks. We might need another podcast.
Yeah. I think it's that it's in terms of like the creating the physical or the physical like creating the feelings. It's that kind of coming back to that internal and external kind of world again, where I know it's just a completely different subject I'm going to take it on, but like
by all means,
I don't know, the kind of state of being human being in this like time, I think is literally a manipulation of reality that's creating specific feelings and almost this cycle of feelings and being, which then in turn changes our perception of reality, which then produces another feeling, and this perpetual kind of system of beliefs and feelings that create what we have, or what we call our society at the moment, and a lot of the kind of nuances around relationships or life or sexuality or even friendship and all these little things that we think they are a certain way, or we should live a certain way, are all kind of manufactured by this perpetual cycle that almost feels manipulated, or it does for me at the moment.
Like constructed.
Yeah.
Okay. As you were speaking, I'm inspired to kind of go in the direction of, are we saying that reality lives in the internal world, or does reality exist in the external world?
That is a good question.
So let's explore it then.
Okay.
Let's start with the external, because I feel like the internal is, there's a lot of given that we don't need to go there yet. The external world, this is the left side of the brain, perhaps, like it would say. The external world is is a fact. Like it's a matter. It's yes, the tree. In short, the tree did make a sound. My ears just can't hear from.
This is one of those
that far.
lately people have been going like, what's a fact?
Yes,
You
true.
know what I mean? It's like,
True. What is a fact? I sometimes find myself asking that question also, but I don't necessarily deny the existence of the idea.
mutually agreed upon truths.
Yes.
Yes.
So this external world, for example, for me, might not be what we internally perceive as existence, but nonetheless is the canvas that we kind of play on. And you know what I'm saying? Because I can kind of take a stance which says, I have all the power, I am God. You know, individually we are all one, powerful, and connected. And it puts an interesting scenario, because if I'm walking home and with all this power and with all this positivity putting out into the world, and someone comes and robs me, sure, I can kind of characterize a narrative that makes that wholesome, but at the very same time, why would I ask for such things? You know, to be robbed. Maybe I should just give. You know, at least if it was an inconvenience for me as well in the moment. And my thing there is about sharing space. You know, it's a really funny one to kind of conceptualize like power and phenomenology through a Western perspective, where we take so much and actually is kind of blindsided to the other side of the world that is suffering because of how much we take. And so we think that it's endless. I mean, I'm still riddled by the existence of supermarkets and how they have constant supplies of food. We don't need constant supplies of food. We don't need to waste food. With the polarity knowing that there is literally a larger part of the population that is starving and dying. And so for me, I think it's a kind of naive or privileged idea to think that, well, those are really strong words. They're really strong words. But where I'm channeling right now,
these are the words that we need. Exactly,
yeah,
yes.
you know, come across as this, to kind of put a lot of, to kind of even just define it as one.
Yes.
You know, because I think on plug on your Instagram, what is the name? Okami. There is a beautiful segment with the bull. It was your old picture.
The flat pictures.
Said a human is just an animal that writes.
Yes.
You know, and there is, I think, a combination. Yes, we colour on this canvas, and we have the power to make this world. You know, we have the power to be its gardeners and to kind of find balance. Yes, we absolutely can make that happen, but I don't think that we control anything, actually.
Which is a mad thing, right? Because there is that sense of omnipotence sometimes. Like, I am in control of my own reality, my own destiny. Like, I feel all powerful. And it's really weird because I am always in this juxtaposition between the two. Because there's times where I know I have fully willed something into my life and I have had full control over it, manifesting that in a very literal, physical, explanatory kind of sense. I can choose exactly what I did, how it all came about, and how things kind of aligned and made that happen, which is crazy and beautiful. But then I also have been through stages, and still now during this, I'm in this stage because it's something that doesn't go away, where some form of clairvoyance has been in my life and taken quite a hefty control over my psychology, my psychological thing, my way of thinking, and there's things that I've seen, felt, experienced that will happen or has already happened, and I've now been able to differentiate between that. And there was this point where it's just happening so much where I lost my sense of reality, because I was thinking, have I been here and done this, and I'm now doing it again to learn? Do I actually have any control over my life because it's already written? Because how could I have already seen this? Like, and it's going to happen. It's like, well, if I've already seen it, I already know it, then I have no control over the outcome because it's going to happen anyway. So because this was happening so much and still happens now, especially when I'm attuned in that energy, my frequency is kind of elevated, I then have that weird thing of going, yes, I am amazing, I can do this, I can channel energy, I can affect people in a positive way and make things happen. But then I have this beautiful, it's such a beautiful thing and such a beautiful gift, so I thank the universe for it, but at the same time it does give me this sense of helplessness sometimes. Like I have no control, like everything's already pre-written, or maybe at certain points things are pre-written, or certain decisions maybe, or maybe things that I see or feel, maybe they're alternative paths, and maybe dependent on what decisions I make at certain points will lead to said paths. And maybe I've seen multiple, and the ones that I tend to remember across the years based on the decisions I make, I don't know, but it does have that real pull between the two sides of going, yes, I have all the power, but also I have absolutely not the power at all. Which, like you say, is mad, because you talked about perception, like maybe this isn't everybody's perception of reality, but and I don't believe that it is, but in the very same way that you say, like, regardless of whether you believe that or what you experience and you know to be true, one other specific factor that we cannot escape it is that this is the canvas that we play on until we're able to leave this plane of being or expand past it. We also have to play within the realms of this canvas and almost interact with it in a very physical sense, which I don't know for you guys or how you experience it, but that can be a real challenge sometimes, especially when you're trying to go internal or expand. And sometimes in the moment I feel the line between the two, especially ever so presently, that is very, very blurred. I find like sometimes I'm like, has this happened? Has it not happened? Am I in the subconscious? Am I in the conscious? Like, do you exist? Do I not exist? Do you exist until I see you? Or you've got like all these things play in my head, and I'm like, you know what, can I just come back a little bit, rein it in, come back to this simple canvas.
So, I mean, this is so far worked out perfectly, because every point I had made, the conversation has flown there naturally anyway, which is amazing. Makes my job easier, right? So within that perception, as you're saying, like, when you start looking at this of what could happen, what has happened, how you feel, how you interact, like, one of the most obvious things is like, it's not just about you, there's other people in this world, so what it is really, what it is your perception, what are things. So from this perspective of group and individual, and in that sense, the world and society, whether you look at it as predisposed, so let's say purpose, fate, things like that, or you look at it as system and a structure, whether human created in a form of economy, for example, or biology created from nature, of how we all die. Within this realm of looking at things about these things, are these things the product of us, or are we the product of these things? And
of which things?
Or maybe it's so let's say if it's a system or fate, because even fate, the concept of there being a higher purpose, it's human created. a system that we live in, whether we are part of it or not, it's still technically created by us, like what we made, the society that we live in. This is the combination of all the individual projections, and you know, it's there. So the question lies, like, this is chicken and the egg thing. Did the system creep in and we became the product of it, or did we make the system and it is the product of who we really are?
I had a train of thought from when Kyle
Yeah.
was, and it kind of has themes. It has because, okay, going back to when you were speaking about you know, the way you perceive yourself from using from the internal world. I think you know, encompassing power and, you know, being able to manifest through purpose and intent. I think I can imagine you very much did that, and we have all, you know, have had these experiences in our lives also, even if they are bad things. And I think you're very much correct also about your influence in the space, at least from what I feel. However, if I guess the part where I felt like throwing a highlighter on is being all powerful on an energetic level. I think the power is infinite, and I think power is also this feeling, this sensation is the real currency of humanity, of the world, perhaps. Definitely for humans, we that is the whole point. We strive for power, and power gives you access. And something as simple as perception. If we truly had freedom, the freedom to perceive however we want to perceive things, we might be superhumans. It could be possible, but that isn't possible with society. With the hive mind thinking, we have to go with commonality.
Yes.
And commonality decides what is man, what is woman, what is left, what is right, facts, false, all of these kind of ideas. So I do think it's a beautiful blend between the fact that there is a physical canvas, my body, your body, this plant, a place we sort of came into. But then there is also let's call that yin, right? Just for kind of the yang of like consciousness and phenomenon and change and space-time, that kind of thing, and how together we get movement, we get manifestation.
You emphasize that motion. You emphasize energy, that vibration, which was the, emotion. We are this like collective species, like the greatest achievement, which why even the fact that right now we can have a conversation and thought about the fact, how did we come here?
Exactly.
How did we get here?
Exactly.
It's only because unlike any other species on this planet, apart from potentially ants, we've managed to be able to bring together millions of us and agree upon something and then mutually invest in it. Like that's that power of creation, I guess, that your individual power is it can be multiplied, that's the word I'm looking for, through this other people's energy, and it isn't this non tangible energy that gets multiplied. It's just that we see it through physical
like the physical measurement is limited,
yes,
100%.
but the internal, the metaphysical,
It's expansive.
it's like the ocean.
It's interesting. I think so. I was going to go with something like there's a point you made that kind of created friction in me to turn, but it doesn't now, because as humans we do search for power in the I feel in the canvas that we live in. But I think what primarily what we are searching for is that freedom in its boundless expansion. I think all the things that we in this physical world buy and consume and take and want, they're all just very physical, very literal forms of expansion. Because whether it's buying things from materials, like, oh, we do it and we search for that feeling. It's not necessarily the thing, it's the feeling of, oh, more, this to fit in, this, or I like this, or so. And it's constantly taking, or food, oh, it tastes amazing, oh, I want more to try it. And then it used to have the same thing over and over again. Oh, I want something more, I want to try something new, I want something different. And it's this constant reaching for expansion. Expansive stimulation. Which we can't, like, which you just said, like, there's limitation. This whole physical form is limiting, and what we have in the external, or the external which we perceive on this level of consciousness, or this dimension of consciousness, has its limitations. And the only way to get that kind of limitless expansion, which I think everybody's craving, whatever form it comes in, physical, love, whatever, can only be found internal. And then the expansiveness, maybe how we all come to it, the kind of these agreed upon things, is because we are all this one energy that is wanting to get to that expansive, so we can become that one energy again. Because I think a lot of the agreed upon things that we have now, it's weird, maybe I'm wrong, and I hate to go into like a cynical kind of way, because it is beautiful that we do have this beautiful agreed upon things that we have, and it creates a society, and there is a lot of good in things. But it also, like you said, it also feels like, for me, this kind of manipulation, and because of that manipulation, it kind of touches into the digital and the
matter versus virtual.
Matter versus virtual kind of thing, is that the virtual, like this system, is what I feel is manipulation, is the cap itself on human expansion. And I too believe superhumans are like so within grasp, and I think we're actually on a cusp of that becoming a thing, in a really literal sense. And I think the digital world and what's going on is the thing that's going to cap and really what's the word I'm looking for?
Integrate?
Not integrate. No, I think it's going to kind of, it might take over that position, so we don't. But I think it's also just going to hinder humanity in that form of expansion. In that. Yeah, I really do. I feel like that is going to kind of pull us away from the possibility of that becoming a thing before we become too great and expansive. Because even in my own physical life right now, there's just been too much that's happened and too much has gone on that I can no longer kind of dispute or go against. It tells me that these things are possible, and there's gifts that I believe the Lord's given me, and things that are in the sense of what we can kind of comprehend. And I think if those things, the same way we have an education system, can be taught to younger people and young human beings at early stages of life, and they're able to expand and really integrate into that way of being and things like that, I don't see why we couldn't have superhumans or super metaphysical humans that have these amazing, wonderful gifts and powers. And power is such a interesting word to use.
That we don't already see ourselves as powerful.
It's more like it's lack of understanding. It's, for example, and this is solely right now thoughts formulating, but our physical realm, if it comes across as finite in a certain manner, or the power, or whatever, anything consumption-wise you can get here, could it be because we have only one language for quantifying things, which is math? In however, whatever language you speak math-wise, concept of linearity, binary, even when you stretch it beyond, it stems from that module. And in places like this, it doesn't imply that it's like it's bad and we've chosen the wrong approach. It's more like we're still young, we're still primitive in a scale, a Kardashev scale, which is scale of evolution and ability to progress, like civilization wise, and it's based upon the ability to extract energy from your planet, solar system, local cluster, and then galaxy. And let's say we would look as in to a type 4 civilization, to us them looking at us would be the same as we look us looking at ants, because ants were probably God knows what. So, but that just shows that it's this finite place, and then concept within this kind of rambling, but there's a phrase from Thor, Marvel, when it gets asked, where are you from? And he goes, Asgard, and where's that? And this is one of the best phrases I've heard, which from a place where magic and science are the same thing. So what are these things that are still, they seem so beyond our capability of understanding? It's just, that's what it is. It's not understood yet. We have 5 minutes left, not even.
Wow.
So, as mentioned at the beginning, there might not be any kind of point per se, although I feel like certain thoughts and or feelings, both internally and externally, have been provoked. Yeah, any last...
Yes, I do. I
Yes.
I have a however, because you asked about, we kind of touched upon slightly the idea of destiny, predetermined things, and chicken or the egg in that kind of scenario. Are we in control and manifesting, or is it a construct, a code, and are we, actually just all externally driven and
we create.
So I have a story for you, a short story that for me is super interesting. I was visiting a friend in London, and I met this friend in my first year at Northern School of Contemporary Dance, and we had an instant connection. And whilst we were hanging out, we both had this mutual kind of agreement and feeling that you're going to be in my life for a long time. And it was like, as we said that, I pictured like what that might look like, but I didn't lament on it.
Yeah.
I pictured something. Yeah, like us in 5 years, 6 years. Ooh. Now I'm visiting her in London, and she's there with her new partner, and she goes to bed, and a few of us go outside to have a smoke, and I had deja vu. However, I had deja vu, and I remembered. I had deja vu, but I remembered why I'm having deja vu.
So it was like the deja vu, or
Yes.
No.
I had this. Yeah.
is this the
I
thing
had
you
this
mentioned in the
sensation.
past?
I had the sensation of deja vu. I'm like, oh, I've been here before. But instead of just being there, then my brain channeled me back to the moment in first year where I was sat with my friend saying, I think that we will be in each
It
other's
was like
lives.
an implanted.
Yes, and that moment, the visualization, my brain, I literally saw the neurons. Like I saw I awoke in the memory of when I cooked up that thought.
Yeah.
And it was exactly that moment that I go, oh, I'm having deja vu.
And it just
Whether or not those two are real, I guess it was my play on, this was interesting. I've never been able to trace back the source.
That's the thing.
You know, where have I had this feeling? So then my thoughts are, if I am living something that I imagine, is my internal world really something that I'm creating, or is it something I'm tapping into? You know, because the whole thing of, you don't create new faces in your dreams, you just literally
Pull them up with what you've
seen.
Yeah.
But don't you think the beautiful thing is, I don't know how many times this happens to you, because mine's a lot within dreams, and it is also within instances and moments of like being in a higher plane, whether that's through external stimulation or whatever. In the moment, because you didn't know the person, you couldn't recognize the face, but you could see the face. But it wasn't until you came to the present and you was in that moment of deja vu, which is such a loose term for me now, that then you're like, oh, you're that face, the wrong, and like this place and that colour and that sound and this feeling and that noise. Oh, whoa. And that's the mad thing. But that's what I mean when I'm like, oh, am I in control of my destiny? Am I not?
Right.
It's pre-written.
Yes.
So I think as soon as you had that question that you said about the kind of the chicken and egg, are we creating, or is it? My answer at the moment, because my reality is so blurred, because of that sense, is I don't know. I truly don't know.
Yeah.
That's my honest advice. So.
Yeah, I am not. I'm also feeling no need at the moment to have an answer, to have to choose something, because I'm just simply taking experiences in and being a part of it and interacting with it, because eventually you'll know what it is that you're seeking.
Man, please, man, because man.
Nice to speak with you.
Because that's what it is, man. Like at the moment,
This is an end as well. So.
Yes.
it's just this is what I've come to the conclusion that the only thing we really have in this life that I know is real is just experiences. We can't pull onto anything. We can't take from anything. Just experience it. Like now, future, past. Just experience it. That's it. That's just beautiful, man. Honestly, like, thank you for that.
Resonate.
Yeah.
Resonate.
So beautiful. It really is, man.
Woo.
Yeah, that was amazing. So whether we are in control or not, whether we're meant to know or not,
Just experience it, man.
yeah, just live
Mm-hmm.
and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just don't know.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly, guys. That's all we know. We don't know.
We don't know.
What I
We
do
don't
know
know.
is we don't know.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. As before, you can subscribe here, and there's more to come. See you guys in a couple of weeks.